just a hack. He's just an absolute hack. And he gets his ass kicked by his teammates every week. It's just, it's terrible. It's just terrible.
Welcome back to another episode of the Believe in NFL Draft Prospects podcast. I'm Joe DeLeone here with NFL draft analyst Ryan Roberts, and we are doing our interior offensive line rankings part 2. We're doing the guards today. And Ryan, I have to say, this is a very, 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 very underwhelming show ranking these guards. I was not bored, but highly deterred by the names that I had to pick from to try and put together a top 5. And I'm going to come out right now, Ryan, and say this. I have absolutely no confidence in this list. I am not, like, I think this could be completely reshuffled, and I hope it is. But I really did not have any guys except for the top 2 that I was like, okay, I'm putting my stamp on these guys. I really like these guys. The rest, it's a hodgepodge of nothingness.
I almost stopped at 4.
Really?
I'm not joking.
Wow.
I was at 4, and then I had me and Joe were talking about this before the show. I ended up watching 13 guys. It wasn't all just this week, like 13 that I've watched up until this point. And I probably had about 5 or 6 guys that I was trying to talk myself into at number 5. And I eventually settled on one guy, but I was like, I don't feel good about this at all.
I did a very similar thing, and we're going to get to what the end result of that was at number 5. And I think it'll be a very pleasant surprise for you, Ryan, to see who ended up making that spot. I got to ask.
I went. Sorry, I'll let you ask the question, but I just wanted to say for the 5th spot, I took I know we're not telling anybody yet who it is, but I went with complete traits at number 5 because I just was like, I'm going to take someone that may have upside because everybody else
sucks.
Isn't very good. No, don't say sucks. Needs improvement. Let's say needs improvement.
A little behind. I got to ask though, did you include the Kansas State kid?
Yes.
Okay. So I think if I had the Kansas State kid, my list would be a little bit better. But we're going to get into all this doing the same way that we did the centers. We're going to alternate back and forth from number 5. Before we get to it, though, folks, I want to tell you about BetOnline. Our partners at BetOnline continue to be the number 1 source for all of your betting needs and sports info. Find all of the latest odds, news, and sports developments, including this year's basketball championship finals, which already happened. Thanks for the updated read. NHL hockey, the Stanley Cup finals, Major League Baseball, and latest fighting news, and even next season's NFL futures. Head to their website today or use your mobile device to sign up today to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use our promo code BELIEVE to get your bonus and get into the action. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, Ryan, let's start us off here. So I'm going to start us off with number 5. And you hinted at about basically how I ended up with my guy, that you almost stopped at 4. And Ryan, I stopped at 4. I chose not to have a 5th guy because I didn't like I sat here trying to watch guys and talking myself into it. And I'm like, I'm not doing it. I'm not going to sit here and do this. I haven't watched enough players. I watched 8 guys.
You watched 8 guys, so that means it's more than 5.
But none of the remaining guys were good enough to go at 5. I wasn't going to force myself to do it. I need to watch more guards.
Just put someone at 5.
No, I refuse. None of the guys that I watched were good, and the remaining guys that are the 2 above them are also not that good.
Joe, this isn't how that works, though. We're not saying like 5 of these guys are going to be top, 100 picks. We're saying that these are the top 5 guys that we've watched so far. You watched at least 5 guys. You have to put someone at 5. You have to. That's not how this works. This isn't a vacuum. This isn't.
I refuse. But Ryan, this is what this guard class has done to me. This is what this group of guys has done to me. Is that I was so annoyed watching these guys. I'm like, the rest of these guys don't deserve to be on the list. Here's what I will say,
Joe.
I
was literally in the same spot where I'm like, I don't want a 5th person. We didn't talk about this before the show. Okay. I was literally like, do I want to include a 5th guy on the list? And I was like, yes, I have to because I watched 13 guys.
A lot of screaming.
It doesn't make any sense. Cop out.
Okay.
It's a cop out.
It's not a cop out. I would have put in Jordan McFadden at 5, but
put him at 5.
Okay,
put him
fine.
at 5.
He is a fake number 5 on my list. Jordan McFadden from Clemson. The reason why I didn't want to include him is that I liked him as a prospect. I talked about how I felt that he was technically further along than some of these other players. I liked his body placement, which tends to be, and his hand placement, his angles, his understanding of leverage, where he needs to be, those various things. That tends to be the case for smaller guys, what they need to do to succeed. The reason why I couldn't necessarily buy into him and I felt like I didn't want to put a stamp on him at number 5 was because of the size issue. Because I think that he could either use those deficiencies and work past them and end up being a decent backup player. He can really only play guard. Maybe he can play some center. We haven't seen him snap before. But I think that those size limitations could also prevent him from having more than a 2 or 3 year career in the NFL.
Was that so hard?
No, but
It wasn't that hard. It wasn't that hard, man. Good job. Good job. Do you want to hear who I have at number 5?
Who do you have at number 5?
You'll never guess who I have at number 5.
McClendon Curtis?
No.
Okay,
no,
you got.
No. I did want to mention McClendon Curtis at the end, though, because I do think he's worth the mentioning. But I had Ladarius Henderson from Arizona State at number 5.
I did not watch him. So what are your thoughts on him?
So he is, if you go to the Rise and Draft database, Joe, he is listed at verified 6'4", 310 pounds, 35 3/8 inch arms, and a 7'2" wingspan as a guard. And I was like, does this guy play tackle for Arizona State? Before I watched him. When I watched him, nope, plays left guard. And part of it, I think, is because I apparently he did play some tackle early on in his career, but Kellen Diesch was their starting left tackle last year, who was a guy that I kind of liked a little bit in last year's cycle. I don't know if he's going to move back out to tackle or not, but either way, there's some traits to work with there, man. There is. He's a pretty light athlete, moves relatively well, has long levers, good in pass protection. He is raw as can be, but man, he's got length, he's got athleticism. There's some things to work with a guy. And my favorite stat about him, directly from the database, he is a 4th-year senior this year, did not redshirt. He's been playing for multiple years. He is only 20 years old still, despite being
so weird.
Entering his 4th year and being a graduate, potentially. Was born December 11th, 2001. So he will not be 21 years old until this December. So he could be a 21-year-old rookie in the NFL.
I had very similar reasoning for slotting my number 4 guy where I put him. I know we're supposed to alternate who goes first for these rankings, but I think it transitions well because the number 4, and I don't know if this guy is considered to be a tackle. I think because he's like a 33-inch arm guy, despite being 6'7", I think he makes more sense as a guard, especially watching him play. But I put it number 4. Who do you think it is based off what I just said, by the way?
You said he's 6'7"?
He's 6'7", but he's got sub 34-inch arms.
Oh, man.
A little stiff.
Jaxson Kirkland?
Yeah, so number 4, I went with Jaxson Kirkland from Washington. So the thing with him, I watched the Michigan game, and Aiden Hutchinson kicked the crap out of him. He absolutely beat the crap out of him during this game.
Ajabo got him pretty good too in that game.
Yeah, and I think those issues you see with him are he's got some hand placement issues, he's got some angle issues. I think the flexibility is a problem. He's not as fluid, which is why I don't think he makes sense playing tackle. But he does move really freaking well for a guy who's listed at 330 pounds and 6'7". I think he needs to sink into his hips a lot more. You can tell that he's really, really stiff-hipped, and he does not know how to even get into his stance fully because he's so goddamn tall and long. But I think there's value there with the way that he moves. I think if you can coach him up and just – it's not hard to work on flexibility. It takes a while, but somebody needs to work on it with him, and hopefully he improves that this upcoming offseason.
That's a good one, Joe, because he was actually a starting guard early on in his career at Washington, so that makes a lot of sense. Honestly, I watched him last year because I thought he was still going to come out, even though he had that disastrous game against Michigan, and then he obviously opted to return. I forgot completely about him, so I didn't even watch him this week to refresh myself and include him in rankings, or else, now that I look about it, he may have been in this top 5 guards, but that's a good one, man. You did your homework there. That's a good job.
Oh, thanks, Ryan. All right, who's your number 4?
Perfect. Well, I was perfect segue, man. I also have a college offensive tackle who's actually playing guard this year, but Nick Broeker, guy that we talked about this week. I like Broeker, man. I do. I think that he is. I compared him a little bit to what's his name that came out of Auburn a couple years ago. It's a
Driscoll.
offensive Jack Driscoll that plays for the Philadelphia Eagles now. I think that he has early on, he's going to kind of be that swing guy that can back up at tackle. He can back up inside at guard where this is going to be his mainstay. And he could save you a roster spot, I think. But long term, I think just like Jack Driscoll, who's getting an opportunity to compete for a starting job this year inside a guard, I think that he has starting upside inside. And good note on him, Joe. I almost called him Jack Driscoll. Nick Broeker was actually playing left guard this year for Ole Miss. They had a offensive tackle that transferred from Western Kentucky, Mason Brooks. So Mason Brooks is starting at right tackle. They had Jeremy James at left tackle. So we're going to see Nick Broeker at guard this year. So
that's interesting that they're bumping him into guard, but honestly, I think better for his projection. And I put him at number 3 on my rankings. Nice. I like Broeker too, and I think the big reason why I'm high on him is that versatility, that the fact that he's played tackle, he's now going to play guard, and I think we might actually have a higher evaluation on him after the season once we see a full season of playing guard. It's not easy to fully project how these guys do when they transition from outside to inside because the positions are more different than we actually consider them to be. But Broeker, you indicated there, that experience in multiple positions, I really like. The one thing I mentioned when we did that breakdown show, I think he needs to work on lunging and leaning too much. And I think he can get away with that a little bit more playing guard than he does at tackle. But I think Broeker definitely makes sense at 3. And anyone who can do multiple things is always going to get a nod in these circumstances.
Well, that little bit of waist bending that he has on film, I think that'll get remedied by moving into guard because he won't have to play outside of his frame as much as he does.
Yeah, and there's not as much room for error. Everything's going to be a lot more close quarters.
Exactly. When guys are more athletic and bendier, you have to kind of overcompensate. So that's why he is going to get overextended at times. Inside a guard, everything's going to be in tighter spaces, tighter quarters, like you just said. So I think he'll be able to play within his frame because I think when Nick Broeker plays within his frame, again, I posted a clip of him, getting inside positioning on a drive block on DeMarvin Leal and just kind of sealing him outside. And when he plays in his frame, he's got some power and he's a pretty good player, man. So yeah, I like Nick Broeker for that one. Number 3, Joe, your favorite player. I bet he's number 1 on your list. Guarantee it.
Christian Mahogany.
Christian Mahogany's number 3 for me. Yep. I like Mahogany, man. Like he's powerful. He's a solid athlete. It doesn't help his cause that he's not going to be able to play this year, but I do think that there's some concerns to be had with lack of length. I see him slip off the blocks a little bit, but when he gets inside of you, he's got some finish power. He's got some natural power. He's got some physicality to him, and he's a solid enough athlete. So I like Christian Mahogany. I think he should probably have a similar thing to Nick Broeker where he's going to have to, kind of be eased along early if he ends up declaring anyway due to the injury this offseason. But I really do think that he has starter upside eventually. But I think that he's a guy that, for me, needs to be taken along a little slower, just in my opinion.
I don't want to go too far on Christian Mahogany because I'm going to wait till I get to him later on. But I really like Mahogany. And if he hadn't gotten hurt, I think it would be more definitive for me to say this deserves to be guard 1. I am significantly higher on him than you are. Like I'll get to him when I get to him on the list, but I think there is value for how he moves, the power profile that he has. And then I just love dudes who are always looking for work, guys who are pricks, as you called it, that are looking to hit dudes when the play might be close to over just because they love the contact.
It's always a positive when I call an offensive lineman a prick on this show.
Yes.
That is, I was an offensive lineman at one point, and
honestly, if any listener gets offended by that we're calling these guys pricks, they don't know football because linemen take pride in being called a prick. Like they love that. Same thing with defensive linemen, same thing with linebackers. Those are the most aggressive positions on the field. Like they want to be called a prick because it means that they're just hitting people to hit people.
Sometimes guys that aren't even like crazy talented last in the NFL because they're pricks. Like, I mean, it's a good thing.
Incognito is a good example.
Well, Richie was a pretty good athlete too coming out of Nebraska, but he's a good example for the fact that he went from probably being a good player off of traits to being a really good player because he was a prick. Like he wanted to dominate the person in front of him. And sometimes
kill
took it a little too far, but he was still a very good player at his peak. There's no doubt about it.
Okay, so you gave your number 3. I gave my number 3. Who's your number 2?
O'Cyrus Torrence, offensive guard from Louisiana that transferred to Florida this offseason. 6'5", 340 plus pounds, vines for arms, just massive dude. He has a 7-foot wingspan. He, outside of Ladarius Henderson, who's my number 5, he's got the longest wingspan. This kid is a scheme-dependent guard. Think Kevin Dotson, who was another Louisiana guy. Think Trey Jackson, who came out of Florida State a few years ago. That was a really good guard at the next level. He needs to be in a power-based scheme. But when he is in a power-based scheme, he has some rare displacement power. Like, this kid is an absolute bully. And I think that he's a functional enough athlete to be good in pass protection, good enough in pass protection. But his biggest forte, man, is always going to be he moves the line of scrimmage. He is a physically imposing guy. And I think that he has still substantial upside because I think that he's going to get it's going to be a similar coaching staff because he followed Billy Napier from Louisiana to Florida. But playing in the SEC where technique is going to matter more than just natural gifts, I think that's going to help O'Cyrus Torrence a ton. And I would not be shocked. I would actually be surprised if he was not a Senior Bowler next year.
Despite me nitpicking him a little bit on the early week show this week, I still really like O'Cyrus Torrence. You talked about the traits that make a lot of sense. He's very powerful. He's so freaking strong. Like, he can bully dudes when he wins on his reps. He's overpowering the hell out of them. And the strength that he has allows him to not only overpower, but significantly overpower opposing defensive linemen. The one thing for me, and I right now I see him as a round 4 guy. I can't really buy into him any higher than that. I really just need him to cut down a little bit of freaking weight because his feet are so damn slow. And it's just, that was the only thing that was so frustrating for me because I watched him and I liked him. The power, all that stuff is great. But it was just such an ick for me seeing the slow feet that he has and the inability to redirect. I think if he can improve on that, then it'd be easier to be higher on him.
It was a what for you?
An ick.
An ick?
You've never heard that word?
Is that like icky? Like,
well, the usage is not great, but here I am bringing more words to the scouting community. You're welcome, scouting community and football fans. Ick is usually a word to describe, like, if you're like dating somebody and then they do something that you're just like super turned off by. So like you might like go on a couple dates with somebody and then they might do something really cringy and then you'll be like, oh, I'm no longer into this person.
Used, ick, directly from dictionary.com, used to express disgust. Oatmeal,
yes.
Ick is the sentence.
Oh, it's more of the usage I'm using is more of like a slang usage than the literal definition.
Also, there's another form of the word, a noun, that is an unpleasantly sticky or congealed substance.
Yeah, that's not what I'm going for, buddy. That's not.
There was two definitions. I'm just working through it.
Yeah, but I'm going off of the slang term, not the quite literal definition. I'm just out here trying to make.
Is this on what you call it then? What's that?
Urban Dictionary?
Urban Dictionary?
I don't know, man. I'm just trying to bring more words to the scouting community because we're talking about arm elasticity and just making shit up.
Don't do it, man. Don't do it. Yesterday you compared someone to Mike Wazowski. Today you're calling someone icky.
No, I didn't say he's icky.
I know. I'm just kidding.
I will continue to dumb down football as the former football player on this show. I will continue to dumb down football as much as possible. That is my goal.
I was a former football player too, man.
I was for slightly longer.
Yes. All right. That's fair. There's no argument there. We should change the title of this show to the Dumb Down Football Podcast then.
I like that. You want to do that?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Maybe you could change the YouTube channel to that instead of calling it the Hack City or whatever.
Well, that's why we call it Hack Cities, because we're a bunch of hacks. All right. I want to finish with my last guy.
Yep.
Christian Mahogany, I am very, very high on. Injury is going to completely screw up his draft projection. I think pre-injury, he's good enough to go early day 2, end of the first round. I think that considering the fact that I watched him next to O'Cyrus Torrence, that they're both 330 pounds, seeing how easily Christian Mahogany moves, that the power that you mentioned earlier that he has as well to back up that weight. And then again, I am obsessed with guys that are always looking to hit dudes. That to me is a intangible trait that you cannot coach in players. Sometimes offensive linemen can be inherently lazy. I like the guys that are always looking to do more during plays if it means burying someone or just getting a nice pop on a guy at the end of a play. That's why I'm a big fan of Christian Mahogany. But the problem is the knee injury. He might not come out. And if he does come out, I think that there's probably going to be a whole round drop in his draft stock, considering the impacts that we usually get for guys that miss entire seasons and not just partial seasons coming into a draft. But you kind of think that he might still declare?
I don't think that it's a foregone conclusion that he won't declare. That's all I'm saying. Like, I don't, with how bad the guard class is, I think he might be like, still good enough to do this type of thing. But yeah, I don't know.
Especially with me talking him up as a first rounder. I assume he's a listener of the pod.
I hope that you don't give him false confidence. Then he ends up not being a first rounder, and then he's going to hate you forever. Could happen.
Yeah, he's totally going to hate me forever. He's going to remember the name Joe DeLeone. Yeah, go ahead.
So Joe, would you be willing to call Christian Mahogany a prick?
To his face?
No, that's how we describe people on this podcast.
I already said he was.
Oh, I didn't hear that. I didn't hear the prick term come out again.
No, yes, I would. I think that meanness, that demeanor, to me is significant. It's noticeable, and I didn't get that with any of the other guys that I watched.
All right, that's fair. That's fair. All right, last guy, you ready for it?
Yeah, the one guy I didn't watch because we didn't have all 22 tape, and I have a moral. I refuse to not watch guys. Yes, I'm a snob. It's a lineman, man. It's hard to watch linemen without having the freaking all 22, and I don't want to put a fake evaluation out there. Go ahead.
It's not a fake evaluation. I feel dirty about this, though. I do feel dirty about this.
Wait. I mean a fake evaluation for me. You've been doing this long enough where your eyes are good enough to spot those things, but I know for a fact I'd put out some half-ass cockamamie description of a player because I'm watching half of him.
All right, that's fair. That's fair. So this, and Joe kind of illustrated it. We don't have coach's film on Kansas State offense for whatever reason. I don't know why. I will get it at some point. Is what it is for now. I watched 4 games of cut-ups because it is harder to evaluate offensive linemen based upon those cut-ups than it is to watch all 22 film. And I feel very weird doing this, but I am putting Cooper Beebe from Kansas State as my interior offensive lineman 1. Joe, I think this kid's good, man. He's good. He's 6'4", 320. Dude, he is dense, though. If you would have told me he's 330, I'd be like, yup, this is not a comparison, okay? I'm putting this out there before I say this.
Yeah, be very careful.
I am not comparing this young man to Quentin Nelson, but what I'm saying is that he has a body type similar to Quentin Nelson, okay? That's all I'm saying. This dude is thick boy all the way from calves all the way up to his shoulders, man.
Hashtag big boy.
He's a big boy, and he plays left tackle for Kansas State. He is going to play guard at the next level. My guy has easy movement in the run game, man. Displacement power is fantastic and a pretty solid athlete. He's not a great athlete because, again, he's a little dense and he's a little tight, but he's fine. He's going to be able to play left or right guard, in my opinion, easily. And he is just an absolute people mover. And he is also a prick. There's he is a bully, man. If he doesn't make it in football, he's going to be a bouncer at a club. That's what this kid is going to be. He 100% is, man. I am so looking forward to getting coach's film on Cooper Beebe because my man is a good player. That's a top 50 football player in my opinion.
Wow.
Yeah.
Can you please get us some Kansas State film so I can watch him?
I'll work on it. All right.
Thank you.
Maybe he's a top 64 kid, top 2 round guy. Definitely, man. Definitely. I think so. Yep.
I have to give a quick shout out to a player who didn't make my list, and I almost talked myself into putting him on the list. Just for football name, great name, Juice Scruggs. I watched him. Best name of the class. Almost put him at number 5, just off the premise that he has a good name. I watched 2 games of him. Guy's got no strength. Doesn't really do a whole lot. Moves okay. Really stumpy too. Arm length is decent for. He's got 33-inch arms.
Good. Yeah,
despite being 6'2". But my man, not very strong. I do have to give him that shout out though. Juice Scruggs, elite football name. Top football name in the class so far.
Well, I actually did watch Juice Scruggs as well, and I kind of moved on after a game because I was like, I don't really. Yeah. He didn't do it for me. 2 guys that I wanted to shout out. We mentioned him early in the podcast, McClendon Curtis, who's the other guard from Chattanooga, which I know you just talked to Rusty Smith, the head coach. Yes. Rusty Wright, excuse me, not Rusty Smith. Rusty Smith was a quarterback that played for the Tennessee Titans. Rusty Wright is the coach for Tennessee Chattanooga. So McClendon Curtis, Joe, is, you want to talk about big boy. It's a big boy, man. He is 6'6", right? Yep, 6'6", down to 325 this offseason, apparently. Although he was 345 last year.
Didn't really look like it.
Yeah. 35-inch arms. 35-inch arms. 6'11" wingspan. My guy is huge. He is a mountain of a man. So get him on your radars. I think he is a borderline draftable player. Not as good, obviously, as Cole Strange from last year, but he's worthy of talking about.
Although, to be fair, last year, and I hate to do this bit, but last year I think Cole Strange was a borderline draftable player, and he ended up going in the first round.
Yeah, I mean, he had a big season, so good for him. And last guy I wanted to shout out to, Joe. This guy actually kind of surprised me a little bit. He's on my radar. His name is Cooper Hodges. He's an offensive tackle out of Appalachian State. He is a starting right tackle for them, but he's only 6'3", 309 pounds with 33 1/8 inch arms. So
not a big boy.
Yeah, no. The height and the weight are not huge, but he has decent arm length, but he's not going to be a tackle at the next level. And he is another guy that I think you would like a lot because he's a little bit of a prick. Like, he plays extremely hard, physical, has some displacement power, solid athlete. Excuse me. Not a great athlete though, but I think he's functional enough where I could consider him maybe being a draftable player at some point, like if he takes a nice step. So he's got some things to work on. His film was actually pretty fun for App State.
Ryan, I think that's going to wrap us up on. We've got Edge coming up next. Alex will be back. We should be having him on the recap show at the end of the week at Joe DeLeone, at Rise and Draft, at NFL Prospects Pod. And we will talk to you folks later. Enjoy your weekend.